My manager said, "You should apologize. It's better for everyone." The room agreed. Heads nodded around the conference table, like a row of dashboard bobbleheads. 12 people who'd called me for help at least once in the past year. Now they sat there, hands folded, eyes down, waiting for me to make this easy for them. I didn't recognize any of them anymore. "We understand this is difficult," my manager continued. His name was Dale Ferris, and he'd been promoted 6 months ago after I turned down the position. I'd trained him on half the systems he now claimed to oversee. "But the client is threatening to pull their account. Legal says if you just acknowledge the miscommunication." There was no miscommunication. "Ben." He used my first name like we were still friends. The access logs show exactly what I said they'd show. Someone used my credentials after hours. I wasn't in the building. I've already provided my timeline, my badge swipes, everything. The badge system has gaps. This came from Judith in HR, a woman I'd helped fix her daughter's laptop once. You know that. I did know that. I'd written 3 memos about it, all ignored. "So you're saying I somehow bypassed physical security, accessed the client database, deleted their backup redundancies, then went home and waited for someone to notice?" "We're not saying anything." Dale leaned forward, trying for sympathetic. "We're just asking you to meet us halfway. For the team." The team. I looked around again. Finance, IT, operations, legal. Half of them wouldn't meet my eyes. The other half were checking their phones under the table. "What exactly would this apology say?" Dale glanced at Judith. She slid a piece of paper across the table. I didn't touch it. "Just a general statement," she said. "Acknowledging your role in the security incident, expressing regret for any inconvenience caused, committing to better practices going forward." My role. The security incident I reported. The incident that occurred under your credentials. There it was. Clean, simple, unfalsifiable. My credentials. My responsibility. Never mind that I'd flagged the vulnerability. Never mind that someone had clearly stolen my access. Never mind that the client had been asking for changes we'd explicitly told them were dangerous, and now they wanted a scapegoat to show their board. I was convenient. "And if I don't sign this?" The silence lasted 3 seconds. In a room this size, 3 seconds is a long time. "Then we'll have to proceed with termination," Dale said, "for cause, which means—" I know what it means. No severance, no reference, no unemployment benefits, a permanent black mark that would follow me through every background check for the rest of my career, and probably a lawsuit from the client just to make sure I stayed down. "Whereas, if you sign," Judith added, her voice softening like she was doing me a favor, "we can call this a mutual separation. You'll have 6 weeks of pay, continuation of benefits, and we'll provide a neutral reference." 6 weeks. I'd been here for 11 years. "Take some time to think about it," Dale said, standing up. Everyone else rose with him like they'd rehearsed this. "We'll need an answer by end of business today." "I don't need time." That stopped them. Dale's hand was already on his chair, ready to push it in. I stood up. My badge was clipped to my belt. I'd worn it every day for 11 years, watched the photo age from my mid-30s to my late 40s, seen the company logo change 3 times, the color scheme updated, the security chip upgraded. I unclipped it and set it on the table next to the unsigned apology. "Thank you all for your time." I walked out before anyone could respond. The door closed behind me with a soft hydraulic hiss. The hallway was empty. 2nd floor, east wing, where they put the conference rooms nobody wanted. Neutral territory for unpleasant conversations. My office was on the 4th floor. I took the stairs. The building was only 5 years old, all glass and steel and open floor plans designed by someone who'd never actually worked in an office. My space was a desk in a pod of 6, surrounded by sound-dampening panels that dampened nothing. I'd stopped keeping personal items here after the 3rd reorganization. But I had files, digital and physical. 11 years of documentation, project notes, system architecture diagrams, client communications. Everything that proved I knew how this place actually worked. I logged into my workstation. My credentials still worked. That was their first mistake. I opened a terminal window and started typing. Not hacking, nothing illegal. Just accessing systems I'd built, using permissions I'd been granted, executing commands that were completely within my job description as of 10 minutes ago. The company website was hosted on our internal servers. I'd migrated it there 3 years ago to save money. I'd also insisted on keeping the domain registration credentials in my personal password manager because I didn't trust our procurement department not to let it lapse. I'd been right about that. They'd let it lapse twice. I'd renewed it both times out of my own pocket and submitted expense reports that took 4 months to process. The website went down at 11:47 a.m. Not deleted, just redirected to a parking page. Completely reversible, assuming they could prove ownership of the domain. Which they couldn't, because the registration was in my name, paid with my credit card, and I'd just updated the contact information to an email address they didn't have access to. I gave it 5 minutes before someone noticed. It took 3. My phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. Then I opened my personal cloud storage and started uploading files. Everything I'd documented about the security vulnerabilities. Every email where I'd warned about the client's demands. Every memo that had been ignored. Not for revenge, for insurance. My desk phone rang. Then my cell again. Then someone from IT appeared in my peripheral vision, walking fast toward my desk. I kept typing. Ben. It was Reggie, one of the junior developers. Good kid, scared of his own shadow. Ben, they're saying the website is down. Looks like it. Did you... He stopped himself, probably remembering that accusing someone of sabotage was above his pay grade. Do you know what happened? Server issue, probably. You should check the logs. We can't access the backend. Your credentials are locked out. Then you should talk to whoever locked them out. That was Dale, like 10 minutes ago. I stopped typing and looked at him. Reggie was 26, lived with 3 roommates, drove a car that barely passed inspection. He'd asked me about home buying last month. I'd given him a whole spreadsheet about mortgage rates and closing costs. Reggie, do you know what they just asked me to do? People are saying they asked me to confess to something I didn't do, to protect a client who ignored our warnings, to make it easier for everyone. Do you think I did it? The security breach? He looked at his shoes. 26 years old and already beaten down enough to know that honesty was expensive. It doesn't matter what I think, he said quietly. You're right. It doesn't. I logged out of my workstation and stood up. The office had gone quiet. People were pretending to work, but everyone was listening. Dale emerged from the stairwell, moving faster than I'd ever seen him move. His face was red. What did you do? Nothing that wasn't mine to do. The website is registered in my name. Has been for 3 years. You can check the expense reports. You can't just... I can, actually. I paid for it. It's my property. That's company infrastructure. Then you should have paid for it. His mouth opened and closed. Behind him, Judith appeared, slightly out of breath. She looked at me, then at Dale, then back at me. Ben, she said carefully, we need to talk about this. No, we don't. I resigned. You accepted. We're done. This is theft of company property. Call the police then. Explain to them how you asked me to falsely confess to a crime, then locked me out of my accounts before I could properly document my work. I'm sure that'll go great. Judith's face went very still. Dale looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't figure out what. The domain registration will be available for transfer in 60 days, I said. That's the minimum hold period. You'll have plenty of time to figure out who's actually responsible for security around here. I picked up my bag, empty except for my lunch and a book I'd been meaning to return to the library. You're making a mistake, Dale said. No, you made a mistake. 12 of you, actually. I just stopped covering for it. I walked past them, past Reggie, past the rows of quiet desks. Nobody looked at me. Nobody said anything. That was fine. I wasn't looking for solidarity. The elevator took 40 seconds to arrive. I counted. When the doors opened, I stepped inside and pressed the button for the ground floor. My phone rang again as I crossed the lobby. I silenced it without looking. The parking lot was half empty. Lunch hour. I'd parked in my usual spot, 4th row back, under a tree that dropped leaves on my windshield every fall. 11 years of the same spot. The asphalt was worn where my tires always sat. I sat in my car for a minute, not starting the engine. The building looked the same as always, glass and steel and the company logo in brushed aluminum letters. Inside, people were panicking, scrambling, trying to figure out what I'd done and how to undo it. They'd figure it out eventually. Someone would call the domain registrar. They'd discover the hold period. Legal would send threatening letters. It would all get resolved in some boring, procedural way. But not today. Today, they'd have to explain to the client why their website was gone. Today, they'd have to admit they'd been so busy covering their asses that they'd forgotten to cover anything that actually mattered. Today, they'd learn what it felt like to be convenient. I started the car and drove home. It was 12:15 p.m. My wife would still be at work. The house would be empty. That was fine. I needed to think. The drive took 20 minutes. Suburbs, shopping centers, traffic lights that caught me at every intersection. Our house was in a development that had been farmland 10 years ago. Cookie-cutter colonials with 2-car garages and professionally landscaped yards. We'd bought it when our daughter was in high school. Good schools, low crime, the kind of place where people jogged at 6 a.m. and everyone waved. I parked in the driveway and sat there for another minute. My phone had 11 missed calls, 6 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Inside, the house was exactly as I'd left it. Coffee cup in the sink, newspaper on the table, my wife's reading glasses by the couch. Everything normal, everything fine. I made a sandwich I didn't eat and sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. This should have felt like victory. Small, petty, insignificant victory. But still, it didn't. It felt like I'd just stepped off a cliff and was waiting to find out how far down the ground was. My phone buzzed, a text message from my daughter. "Dad, what's going on? Trevor just called me." Trevor, my son-in-law, married to my daughter for 3 years, worked in operations at my company, my former company. I'd helped him get the job. I didn't respond. Another text. "Dad, are you okay?" Then another. "People are saying you got fired." Then, "Please call me." I turned my phone off and set it face down on the table. The house was very quiet. Outside, someone's dog barked. A car drove past. Normal sounds, normal day. I sat there until the light changed and my sandwich curled at the edges. Then I got up and went to my office. I called it an office. Really, it was the spare bedroom with a desk and a filing cabinet. My wife used it for storage. I used it for the things I couldn't leave at work. The filing cabinet was locked. I kept the key in my wallet, behind my expired gym membership card. Inside were folders, years of them. Performance reviews, project documentation, emails I'd printed and saved. The kind of thing you keep when you don't quite trust the people you work for, but haven't admitted it to yourself yet. I'd been keeping them for 7 years. Ever since the first reorganization, when they'd brought in a consulting firm that fired 20% of the staff and told the rest of us we were lucky to survive. I pulled out the folder labeled Security Audit, Client Services. Inside were 50 pages of documentation, every vulnerability I'd identified, every warning I'd sent, every request for resources that had been denied, every shortcut the client had demanded and management had approved, and every email where I'd said, in writing, "This is going to be a problem." I spread them on the desk and took pictures with my personal tablet. High resolution, every page. Then I uploaded them to 3 separate cloud services, each with a different email address, not revenge, insurance. My phone was still off. I left it that way. At 4:30, I heard my wife's car in the driveway. She came in through the garage the way she always did. I heard her keys hit the bowl on the counter, her shoes on the tile, the refrigerator opening. Then, Ben? Upstairs. She appeared in the doorway of the office, still in her work clothes, a blouse and slacks that made her look more professional than she felt. She was holding a bottle of water and looking at me with the expression she used when she was deciding whether to ask questions or just wait. She waited. I quit, I said. I heard. Already? Trevor called me. Around 1. Trevor, of course. What did he say? That there was some kind of incident, that you'd been asked to resign and you took down the company website instead. It wasn't instead. It was after. She came into the room and sat on the storage ottoman that we kept meaning to replace. What happened? I told her. All of it. The meeting, the apology, the ultimatum, the badge on the table, the domain registration. She listened without interrupting. That was something I loved about her. She never jumped to conclusions. She just collected information until she had enough to form an opinion. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Are you okay? She finally asked. I don't know yet. Are they going to sue you? Probably. Can they win? I don't think so. The domain's legitimately mine. I paid for it. I have the receipts. That's not what I asked. I looked at her. She was watching me with that steady, evaluating gaze that missed nothing. They can make it expensive, I said, even if they lose. How expensive? Legal fees, court costs, maybe 10,000, maybe more. She nodded slowly. We have that. In the emergency fund. That's what it's for. It's supposed to be for actual emergencies. Ben. She said my name the way she did when I was being deliberately obtuse. This is an emergency. I didn't argue. What about work? I asked. Your work. Is this going to affect you? She worked at a medical practice, billing and insurance. Nothing to do with my industry, but small towns had a way of making connections that didn't exist. I don't know, she said honestly. Maybe. We'll find out. I'm sorry. Don't be. Not yet. She stood up and looked at the papers spread across the desk. This is your documentation? Some of it. Good. You'll need it. She left the room. I heard her going back downstairs, opening the refrigerator again, starting dinner like this was any other Wednesday. I sat there surrounded by evidence of my own competence and wondered when exactly I'd become the kind of person who needed insurance against his own employer. 7 years ago, apparently. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. My phone was still off. I turned it back on at 6 o'clock when my wife called me down for dinner. 17 missed calls, 14 voicemails, 23 text messages. I didn't check any of them. Dinner was chicken and rice and vegetables, the same meal we'd had 100 times. We ate in the dining room because my wife insisted, even though we both would have been fine with the couch and the TV. Trevor wants to meet, she said halfway through. When? Tomorrow, he said it's important. I bet. Ben? What? He works there. Of course he's worried. He's also your son-in-law. He's also the guy who just got access to my system permissions. She set down her fork. What? I checked the access logs before I left. My credentials were reassigned this morning, to Trevor's account. Before the meeting? 2 hours before. She sat back in her chair. That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. They needed someone to take over my projects. Trevor's in operations. He knows the systems. It was efficient. But you hadn't resigned yet. They knew I would. How? I didn't answer. She didn't push. We finished dinner in silence. I helped her clean up, loading the dishwasher the way I'd done 1,000 times. Normal domestic routine. Everything fine. Except nothing was fine. At 8 o'clock, my daughter called. My wife answered. They talked for a few minutes in voices I couldn't quite hear from the living room. Then my wife came in and handed me the phone. She wants to talk to you. I took it. Hey. Dad. My daughter's voice was tight, controlled. She worked in HR at a law firm. She was good at controlled. What happened? You mean besides getting fired? You weren't fired. Trevor said you quit. I resigned, after being told to confess to something I didn't do. That's not what he said. Then he wasn't in the meeting. He said you sabotaged the website. I redirected a domain I own. It's not sabotage if it's your property. Dad, did Trevor tell you he got my system access? This morning? Before they even talked to me? Silence. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. He didn't mention that, she finally said. I bet he didn't. This isn't fair. He didn't ask for this. Nobody asked for any of this, but here we are. You could have just signed the paper. And there it was. The thing I'd been waiting for since this started. Would you have? I asked. If someone asked you to confess to something you didn't do? To make things easier for them? It's not the same. Why not? Because... She stopped herself. Because you have responsibilities. To us. To Mom. I have responsibility to tell the truth. The truth isn't going to pay your mortgage. I almost laughed. Almost. You sound like a lawyer. I am a lawyer. You're an HR coordinator. Same thing. No, it's really not. Another silence. I could hear her breathing, trying to decide whether to push harder or retreat. Trevor wants to meet with you, she said. Tomorrow. Your mom told me. Will you? Why? Because he's trying to help. By taking my job? By keeping the projects running, someone has to. Sure. And the fact that it gets him a promotion has nothing to do with it. That's not fair. Fair. Everyone keeps using that word. You want to know what's fair? I spent 11 years building systems that company depends on. I reported a security breach. I documented everything. And when they needed someone to blame, they picked me. That's fair? Dad. And now my own daughter is calling to tell me I should have just lied. For the team, for the family, for everyone except myself. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? I'm saying you need to think about the consequences, for all of us. I am thinking about the consequences. That's all I've been doing. Then act like it. She hung up. I stared at the phone for a minute, then handed it back to my wife. That went well, I said. She didn't smile. We went to bed at 10. I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to my wife breathe beside me, thinking about access logs and domain registrations and all the things I'd documented without quite admitting why. At 2 a.m., I got up and went back to the office. The folders were still spread across the desk. I opened my laptop and started writing. Not a manifesto, not a confession. Just a clear, factual timeline of everything that had happened, every meeting, every decision, every warning I'd given, every time I'd been ignored. I wrote until dawn, until my wife got up and found me still sitting there in yesterday's clothes. Did you sleep at all? She asked. No. She looked at the laptop screen. What are you writing? A record. For what? In case I need it. She didn't ask what that meant. She just went downstairs and started coffee. I saved the document to all 3 cloud services, then I printed it. 43 pages. I put them in a folder labeled Timeline and locked them in the filing cabinet. Then I took a shower and got dressed and waited for Trevor to call. He didn't call. He showed up. At 9 a.m., the doorbell rang. I answered it. Trevor was 32, clean-cut, ambitious in the way people are when they've never failed at anything important. He was wearing khakis and a polo shirt with the company logo, like he'd come straight from work. Ben, he said, thanks for seeing me. I didn't know I had a choice. He smiled like I'd made a joke. Can I come in? I stepped back and let him into the house I'd been making mortgage payments on since before he met my daughter. He sat on the couch without being invited. I stayed standing. Look, he said, I know this is awkward. Do you? I want you to know I didn't ask for any of this. The access transfer, the projects. Dale just called me in and said it was happening. When? Yesterday morning. Before they talked to me. I guess. I don't know the timing. But you took it. The access. What was I supposed to do? Say no? That's one option. He leaned forward, earnest and reasonable. Ben, I'm trying to help. Someone has to keep these systems running. You know that. I do know that. I built most of them. Exactly. So you know how critical this is. The client is threatening to pull out. We're talking millions in revenue. And somehow that's my problem. It's everyone's problem. No, it's management's problem. They ignored my warnings. They cut the security budget. They approved changes I explicitly told them were dangerous. And when it blew up, they decided I was easier to sacrifice than the client relationship. That's not how they see it. I know. That's the problem. He sat back, recalibrating. What do you want, Ben? Really? I want them to admit they screwed up. I want my job back. I want an apology. That's not going to happen. I know. So, what's the end game here? You redirect the website, you make everyone's life difficult, and then what? They hire someone else to do your job. You burn 11 years of relationships. And for what? Principals. Principals don't pay the mortgage. That was the second time in 12 hours someone had said that to me. You sound like my daughter. I talked to her last night. She's worried about you. She sounded more worried about you. She's worried about all of us. This affects everyone, Ben, not just you. Funny how my problems become everyone else's problems only when it's convenient. He stood up. I'm trying to help here. No, you're trying to manage me. There's a difference. Fine. You want the truth? They're going to sue you. Legal is already drafting the complaint. Theft of company property, breach of contract, tortious interference. You'll spend the next year in depositions and hearings, and you'll lose. Maybe. Definitely. They have lawyers on retainer. You'll have to hire someone. It'll cost you everything. Maybe. And even if you win, even if you somehow prove the domain was yours, you'll never work in this industry again. Every background check, every reference call, it'll all come back to this. The guy who sabotaged his employer on the way out, you'll be unhireable. So I should just accept it. Roll over, make it easy for everyone. I'm saying you should be smart, cut your losses, move on. I looked at him standing in my living room in his company polo shirt, explaining my options to me like I was a problem to be solved. Get out, I said. Ben, out, now. He opened his mouth like he might argue, then thought better of it. He walked to the door and paused with his hand on the knob. This didn't have to be like this, he said. Yes, it did. He left. I watched through the window as he got into his car and drove away. My wife came downstairs. How'd it go? About how you'd expect. He's going to tell them you're not backing down. Good. Let's be clear about it. She nodded slowly, then went to the kitchen. I heard her making phone calls, canceling plans, rearranging things, preparing for the siege. Smart woman, my wife. At noon, the first legal letter arrived. Email, not physical mail. They weren't wasting time. It was exactly what Trevor had predicted. Theft, breach, interference, demands for immediate return of company property, threats of further action. I read it twice, saved it to all 3 cloud services, and didn't respond. At 2 p.m., my daughter called. I didn't answer. At 4 p.m., a process server arrived at my door with a temporary restraining order. I was not to access, modify, or interfere with any company systems or property. I was not to contact any current employees. I was not to communicate with any clients. I signed for it without reading it and closed the door. Well, my wife said from the kitchen, it's official. Yeah. What now? I looked at the restraining order. Boilerplate legal language, meant to scare me into compliance. It might have worked if I hadn't already done everything I needed to do. Now, I said. Now we wait. For what? For them to realize I'm not the only problem they have. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded and went back to whatever she'd been doing. I went upstairs to the office and opened my laptop. 60 days until the domain hold expired. 60 days until they could try to transfer it. 60 days until they'd have to explain to their client, their board, and their shareholders why their entire web presence had been dark for 2 months. 60 days was a long time. Long enough for a lot of things to go wrong. I opened a new document and started writing again. Not a timeline this time. A list. Every system I'd built, every vulnerability I'd documented, every shortcut that had been approved over my objections, every disaster waiting to happen. I didn't plan to cause any of them. I didn't need to. They'd cause themselves. I just needed to make sure I could prove I'd warned them. Outside, the sun was setting. The neighborhood was quiet. Someone's sprinkler was running. A kid was riding a bike. Normal evening sounds. Inside, I worked until my eyes burned, and my wife called me down for dinner. Tomorrow I'd find a lawyer. Tomorrow I'd start fighting back. Tonight, I documented everything. That's what you do when you're about to go to war. You make sure you remember why you started. The lawyer's office was in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a tax preparation service. Not exactly the marble and mahogany I'd been picturing, but the reviews online had been solid and his consultation fee was reasonable. His name was David Park. Mid-40s, Korean-American, wore a tie that looked like he'd put it on in the car. His office was neat but not fussy, with file boxes stacked along one wall and a coffee maker that looked like it got serious use. So, he said, after I'd summarized everything, they're threatening to sue you over a domain registration you legitimately own. That's the summary. And you have receipts. 3 years of them. And documentation that you reported the security breach. 50 pages. And they asked you to sign a false confession. They called it an apology. He leaned back in his chair. It squeaked. Mr. Hoffman, I'm going to be honest with you. This is a stupid lawsuit. Good stupid or bad stupid? Stupid stupid. They don't have a case. The domain's yours. You paid for it with your own money. The fact that you used it for company purposes doesn't make it company property. That's not how property law works. So I'm fine. You're not fine. You're going to spend $10,000 proving you're fine. Maybe more if they drag it out. Trevor said the same thing. Who's Trevor? My son-in-law. He works there. He's the one who got my system access. Park's eyebrows went up. Your son-in-law? Yeah. How's that relationship? Complicated. I bet. He pulled a legal pad closer and started writing. Okay, here's what's going to happen. They'll file. You'll respond. We'll go through discovery, which means they'll demand every piece of paper you've ever looked at, and you'll do the same to them. Eventually, we'll end up in front of a judge who will realize this is a waste of everyone's time and either dismiss it or push for settlement. How long? 6 months minimum. Maybe a year. And the cost? 10,000 if they're reasonable, 20 if they're vindictive, 30 if they're both. I did the math in my head. Emergency fund would cover 10. Maybe 15. After that, we'd be into savings. The college fund we'd never used because our daughter got a scholarship. The retirement account we'd been building for 20 years. What if I just give them the domain? I asked. You could, but then you'd be admitting they were right, and you'd have a confession of theft on record. That'll follow you. What if I charge them for it? How much? I don't know. Market rate? 10,000? Park shook his head. That looks like extortion. Give me money or I'll keep your property. Even if it's technically your property, the optics are bad. So I'm stuck. You're stuck between expensive and more expensive. Welcome to the legal system. I sat there for a minute, thinking about the mortgage payment due in 3 weeks, the car insurance, the electric bill, all the normal expenses of normal life that didn't stop just because you'd lost your job. There's another option, Park said. Which is? You could go public. Find a reporter who covers employment law or tech industry. Tell your story. The company that fires whistleblowers and steals their property. It won't win you any legal points, but it might make them back off. Or it might make them angrier. That too. What would you do? I asked. In my position. He thought about it. I'd fight. But I'm a lawyer. I like fighting. You're a middle-aged IT guy who just wants his life back. Those are different priorities. I don't want my life back. That life just fired me. Fair enough. So what do you want? I want them to admit they were wrong. They won't. I know. So what do you really want? I looked at him. He was watching me with the expression lawyers get when they're trying to figure out if their client is rational or just angry. I want them to understand what they did, I said. I want them to feel it. That's not a legal strategy. I know. He wrote something on his legal pad. Okay, I can work with that. But you need to understand, revenge isn't a cause of action. I can't sue them for being terrible people. I can only sue for damages, financial damages. And right now, your damages are pretty minimal. You lost your job, but they're claiming it was for cause. You lost your severance, but that was contingent on signing the apology. The domain issue is theirs, not yours. So, I have no case. You have a defense. That's different. They're the ones suing you. We're just responding. What if I sue them? For what? Wrongful termination, defamation, I don't know, you're the lawyer. Wrongful termination is hard to prove. They'll say you resigned. Defamation requires them to have made false public statements about you. Have they? Not yet. Then we wait until they do. If they do. I felt the weight of it settling in. The long, slow grind of legal process. The paperwork and the waiting and the discovery requests and the depositions. The thing that happens when you try to fight institutions that have lawyers on retainer and time on their side. How do you usually win these cases? I asked. We don't. Usually we settle. They pay you to go away. You sign an NDA. Everyone moves on. And if I don't want to settle? Then it gets expensive. I stood up. Thanks for your time. Mr. Hoffman. He stood too. I need to know if you're hiring me. I'll let you know. The longer you wait, the harder this gets. I know. I left his office and sat in my car in the strip mall parking lot, watching people go in and out of the dry cleaner. Normal people with normal problems, stains and hemlines and pickup times. I drove home and found my wife in the kitchen making lunch. She looked up when I came in. How'd it go? About how I expected. Is he good? He's honest. That's not the same thing. No, it's better. She cut a sandwich in half and slid it across the counter to me. Are you hiring him? I don't know yet. What's the holdup? He wants to settle. They all want to settle. Pay me some money, sign an NDA, everyone moves on. And you don't want that. I want them to admit they were wrong. They won't. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. I took a bite of the sandwich. Turkey and Swiss. The same lunch she'd been making me for 20 years. Everything normal. Everything fine. What if I told you I had another plan? I said. She set down her knife. What kind of plan? The kind that doesn't involve lawyers. Ben, hear me out. I don't want to hear you out. I want you to hire the lawyer and let him do his job. His job is to make this go away quietly. That's not what I want. What do you want? I want them to understand what they did. And how exactly are you going to make that happen? I didn't answer. She watched me for a long moment, then shook her head. You're going to do something stupid, she said. Probably. Something that could get you arrested. I hope not. Ben, I'm not going to hurt anyone. I'm not going to break any laws. I'm just going to stop protecting them. From what? From themselves. She picked up her sandwich and took a bite, chewing slowly while she thought. You know what you're doing? she finally asked. No, but I know what they're doing. And I know how to make sure everyone else knows too. That sounds like revenge. Good. She almost smiled. Almost. Don't do anything illegal, she said. I won't. Don't do anything that'll get you sued worse than you're already being sued. I'll try. And don't do anything I'll have to lie about in court. Deal. She went back to her sandwich. Conversation over. Permission granted, or at least not denied. I went upstairs to the office and opened my laptop. The company had 12 major systems: web hosting, client databases, billing, HR, inventory, logistics, communications, file storage, email, project management, security, and backup. I'd built or maintained 8 of them. I'd documented vulnerabilities in all 12. None of the vulnerabilities were my fault. They were the result of budget cuts, rushed deployments, deferred maintenance, and management decisions I'd argued against. But they were there, waiting. I hadn't caused them. I'd just failed to prevent them. There's a difference. I opened the security audit file and started reading. 50 pages of warnings, recommendations, and risk assessments. Every single one had been acknowledged and ignored. I started making a new list. Not of the vulnerabilities, of the people I'd warned about them. Dale was on there. So was Judith. So were 5 people in senior management, 3 people in IT, and 2 people on the board. Trevor wasn't on there. He'd been too junior when I wrote most of these reports, but he was about to learn. I spent the afternoon cross-referencing my documentation with the company org chart. Who knew what? When they knew it? What they'd done about it? The answer was, almost everyone knew almost everything, and they'd done almost nothing. At 5 p.m., my phone rang. My daughter. I answered this time. Dad. Hey. We need to talk. Okay. In person, can you meet me? When? Now. There's a coffee shop on Maple, near the bookstore. I know it. 30 minutes? Sure. She hung up. I looked at my wife. She wants to meet, I said. I heard. Should I go? Do you want to? I don't know. Then go. Find out what she wants. I drove to the coffee shop. It was one of those places with exposed brick and Edison bulbs and a chalkboard menu that tried too hard. My daughter was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. She looked tired. Hair pulled back, minimal makeup, the kind of professional casual that meant she'd left work early for this. Hi, I said. Hi. Sit. I sat. She pushed one of the coffees toward me. Black, right? Right. We sat there for a moment. The coffee shop was mostly empty. A couple of college kids with laptops. A woman reading a book. Background music that sounded like it was recorded in someone's garage. Trevor told me about your meeting, she said. I figured. He said you kicked him out. He left voluntarily. Dad. What do you want me to say? He came to my house to explain why I should give up. I didn't want to hear it. He was trying to help. He was trying to manage me. There's a difference. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. Why are you doing this? Which part? All of it. The website, the lawsuit, making everyone's life difficult. I'm not making everyone's life difficult. I'm just not making my own life smaller to accommodate theirs. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. She looked at me like she was trying to see something that used to be there and wasn't anymore. I don't recognize you right now, she said quietly. Good. Maybe you never really did. That's not fair. Fair. Everyone keeps using that word. Because it matters. Does it? Was it fair that I got blamed for a breach I reported? Was it fair that they asked me to confess to something I didn't do? Was it fair that Trevor got my job before they even fired me? He didn't ask for that. He took it, though. What was he supposed to do? He's your husband. You tell me. She set down her coffee cup harder than necessary. You want to know what I think? I think you're so focused on being right that you've stopped caring about what it's costing everyone else. Everyone else, not me. Everyone else. Yes, Mom, me, Trevor. Everyone who has to live with the consequences of your decisions. Funny. Nobody asked me about the consequences when they were making their decisions. That's not the same thing. Why not? Because. She stopped, regrouping. Because you're supposed to be the adult here. I almost laughed. I am the adult. I'm the one who built their systems. I'm the one who warned them about the risks. I'm the one who did everything right. And when it all went wrong anyway, I'm the one who got blamed. So yes, I'm the adult. I'm the one dealing with consequences while everyone else pretends they didn't know better. You're being selfish. I'm being honest. It's the same thing right now. I took a sip of coffee. It was good. Probably cost $5. Everything was expensive when you didn't have a job. What do you want from me? I asked. Really, I want you to stop, apologize, give them the domain, move on. Find another job, let this go. And Trevor? What about him? Does he keep my job? It's not your job anymore. You didn't answer the question. Yes, he keeps it. Someone has to do it. And the fact that he benefits from me being gone, that doesn't bother you? He didn't make this happen. He participated in it. He did his job. At my expense. You made that choice when you walked out. I set down my coffee cup. I need you to understand something. I didn't walk out. I was pushed. And everyone around me, including you, is acting like I jumped. Dad, I'm not done. I spent 11 years making that company work. I fixed their problems. I cleaned up their mistakes. I warned them when they were about to screw up, and I kept everything running when it did. I was loyal. I was reliable. I was everything they said they wanted. And the second it was convenient, they threw me away. So no, I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to make this easy. I'm not going to pretend this is anything other than what it is. Which is what? A betrayal. The word hung there between us. She looked at her coffee, at the table, at anything except me. I didn't betray you, she said quietly. You took their side. I took reality's side. They were going to fire you anyway. Trevor was going to get reassigned anyway. Nothing you do now changes any of that. Maybe, but it makes me feel better. That's childish. Probably. She stood up. I have to go. Okay. Mom's worried about you. I know. Are you worried about you? Not yet. She looked at me for another moment, then picked up her bag and left. I sat there finishing my expensive coffee, watching people come and go. Normal people with normal problems. Work stress and family drama, and all the small disasters that feel big until you have actual problems. I pulled out my phone and called Park, the lawyer. Mr. Hoffman? He answered. Have you made a decision? Not yet, but I have a question. Go ahead. If they sue me and I countersue, what happens? Depends on what you sue for. Wrongful termination, defamation, breach of contract, whatever applies. Then we end up in litigation that'll take a year and cost both sides a fortune. But it keeps the case open. It keeps everything public. Technically, yes, but most of this will be under seal. It won't be public in the way you're thinking. What if I don't want it sealed? Then you'll lose most of your motions. Courts don't like airing corporate dirty laundry unless there's a compelling public interest. What if there is a public interest? Is there? They're hiding security vulnerabilities from their clients. That's public interest. He was quiet for a moment. Do you have proof of that? I have documentation that I reported vulnerabilities and they were ignored. That's not the same as hiding them from clients. But if the clients don't know about the vulnerabilities and the company does, what's the difference? The difference is intent. You'd have to prove they deliberately concealed information. That's hard. But possible. Mr. Hoffman, what are you planning? Nothing illegal. That's not reassuring. I'll call you back. I hung up and drove home. My wife was in the living room watching something on TV. I sat down next to her. "How was it?" she asked. "She wants me to give up." And I told her no. How'd she take it? About like you'd expect. She muted the TV and looked at me. "You're really going to do this?" "Yeah. Even if it costs you your relationship with her. She's the one making it cost that. That's not how she'll see it." "I know." She unmuted the TV, and we sat there watching whatever was on. Some drama about people with problems that would be solved in 42 minutes. At 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Dale. We need to talk. Tomorrow. My office. 10 a.m. I showed it to my wife. "Are you going?" she asked. "Should I?" "Probably not, but you will anyway." "Probably." I texted back. "I'll be there." The response was immediate. "Come alone." I showed that to my wife too. "That's not ominous," she said. "Little bit." "You're still going?" "Yeah." "Want me to wait in the parking lot, in case you need an alibi?" "You'd do that?" "We've been married 23 years. Of course I'd do that." I kissed her and went to bed. This time, I slept. Tomorrow would be interesting. The diner was exactly the kind of place Reggie would pick. Vinyl booths, laminated menus, waitresses who called everyone Hun. Anonymous and cheap. The parking lot was half full with work trucks and economy cars. I got there at 12:25. Reggie was already inside, sitting in a back booth, looking at his phone like he was thinking about running. I slid into the seat across from him. "Thanks for meeting me." "I can't stay long." "That's fine." A waitress appeared with coffee. We both ordered burgers we probably wouldn't eat. She left. Reggie still hadn't looked at me. "Why are you doing this?" "You were in that meeting. You know why." "I know they asked you to apologize and you refused." "They asked me to confess to something I didn't do." "That's not what Dale said." "What did Dale say?" "That there was a misunderstanding. That you took it personally. That you overreacted." "And you believed him?" Reggie finally looked up. He looked tired. 26 and already tired. "It doesn't matter what I believe. It matters to me." "Why?" "Because you were there. You heard them. You know what they asked me to do. They asked you to take responsibility for something I didn't do." "How do I know that?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the documentation, the security audit, the warnings, the emails, 3 years of evidence. He read through it slowly. His burger arrived. He ignored it. "This is all real?" he asked. "Every word." "Why didn't you show them this?" "I did. In those meetings. In those emails. They ignored it." "Why?" "Because fixing it was expensive. Because the client didn't want to wait. Because admitting vulnerability makes you look weak. Pick your reason." He set down my phone. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to talk to a journalist. Tell her what happened in that meeting. What they asked me to do." "I'll get fired." "Not if you do it anonymously." "They'll figure it out." "Maybe. Or maybe they'll figure it's one of the other 11 people in that room." "Why would I risk it?" "Because it's the truth. Because they blamed the wrong person. Because you know it was wrong." He picked up his burger and put it back down without taking a bite. "I have student loans, car payment, rent. I can't afford to be unemployed." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because you had a house and savings and 11 years of experience. I have none of that. If they fire me, I'm done." "Reggie, no. You don't get to ask me to sacrifice for your principles. You already sacrificed yourself. That's enough." He stood up. "I'm sorry about what happened. I really am, but I can't help you." He left. The waitress brought his check. I paid for both of us. I sat there for a while, eating a burger that tasted like cardboard, thinking about student loans and car payments and all the ways fear keeps people quiet. Back in the car, I called Janet Rice. "Mr. Hoffman, Progress? Not exactly. I reached out to a potential corroborating witness. He declined. That's not surprising. I know. I'm working on others. How many others? 11. Good luck with that. What if I can't get corroboration? Then we publish what we have with appropriate caveats. Former employee claims instead of company documents prove. It's weaker but still printable. And if they sue? They probably will. That's why I need you on record. Anonymous sources are fine for background, but if we're making specific claims about negligence, I need a named source. My name's already on the lawsuit they filed. Different lawsuit. This one would be defamation. Much harder to defend. Even if everything's true? Truth is a defense, but you have to prove it. In court. With evidence they'll try very hard to exclude. How hard? Every procedural motion they can think of, discovery fights, privilege claims, it'll be expensive and exhausting. More expensive than the current lawsuit? Probably about the same, but combined, you're looking at serious money. How serious? $50,000 if they're vindictive, more if they drag it out. I did the math. Emergency fund, savings, retirement account. We could cover maybe $30,000 before we started selling assets. What if we waited? I asked. For what? For them to make a mistake. Something public. Something undeniable. Like what? Like another breach. Or a client finding out about the vulnerabilities, or a regulatory audit. That could take months, years. Or it could happen next week. Mr. Hoffman, are you planning to cause another breach? No, I'm planning to stop preventing them. That's a distinction without a difference. It's an important distinction. I'm not attacking them. I'm just not protecting them anymore. She was quiet. You realize that's still potentially criminal if you have knowledge of vulnerabilities and don't report them. I did report them. For 3 years. They ignored me. I'm not employed there anymore. I have no obligation to continue reporting. That's a legal gray area. That's why I have a lawyer. Does your lawyer know about this plan? He knows enough. Mr. Hoffman, 1 week. Let me see what happens. If nothing does, we publish what we have. And if something does happen, then we have a better story. Or you have a criminal charge. Risk and reward. I hung up before she could argue further. Back at home, I opened my laptop and started reviewing system access logs. Not the company's logs, my own. Every access I'd ever had, every system I'd touched, every credential I'd ever used. All revoked now. Trevor had seen to that. But there were gaps. Things Trevor didn't know about. Legacy systems I'd set up years ago. Backdoor access I'd created for emergency maintenance. Accounts that existed in documentation that was never properly transferred. I wasn't going to use them. That would be illegal. But I could document them. I could make sure someone knew they existed. I started a new file. Outstanding access issues. Every account, every system, every potential vulnerability. Then I sent it to my personal email, not the company, not the journalist, just my own records. At 3 p.m., my wife came home early from work. Everything okay? I asked. Philip asked to see me. Philip was her boss, practice manager at the medical office where she handled billing. What did he want? To tell me someone called asking about you. Who? He wouldn't say, but they wanted to know if you had financial troubles, if I'd mentioned anything about lawsuit concerns, if our marriage was stable. Someone from the company. Probably. What did he tell them? Nothing. Said it wasn't their business, but he wanted me to know it happened. How'd he seem about it? Uncomfortable. He likes you. He doesn't like people calling his office asking questions about his employees' families. Did he say I should stop what I'm doing? No. He said I should tell you to be careful. That's good advice. Are you being careful? I'm trying. She set down her bag and came to look at my laptop. What's this? Documentation of system access issues. Whose system? Theirs. Ben. I'm not doing anything with it. I'm just documenting what exists. That sounds like splitting hairs. It's an important split. She closed the laptop. I'm serious. Be careful. These people are looking for reasons to make this worse for you. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're giving them reasons. I'm giving them exactly what they gave me. Consequences. That's revenge. Yes. That's not like you. Maybe it is now. She looked at me for a long moment. I'm not saying stop. I'm saying be smart about it. I'm being as smart as I can. Then be smarter. She went upstairs. I heard the shower running. She was washing off the day, the conversation with Philip, the worry about me. Janet Rice called back at 8 a.m. I was still in bed, but I answered anyway. You have corroboration? A witness from the meeting, anonymous. How anonymous? No name, no identifying details, no quotes that could tie back to him. That's very anonymous. That's the condition. Can I talk to him directly? Maybe. I'll ask. When? Today. I'll set it up. She was quiet for a moment. Mr. Hoffman, this better not be a waste of my time. It's not. Because I've already invested hours in this story. If your witness backs out or can't provide useful information... He was in the room. He heard everything. He'll confirm what I told you. That's not enough. I need specific details. What was said, who said it, what the tone was. I need color. He'll give you that. He better. She hung up. I got up and called Reggie. It went to voicemail. Reggie, it's Ben. The journalist wants to talk to you. Directly. Can you call her today? I'll send you her number. I texted him Janet's contact info. Then I went downstairs. My wife was already gone. A note on the counter. Early shift. Home by 2. Don't do anything stupid. Good advice. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, waiting for Reggie to call back. At 9:30, my phone rang. Not Reggie. Dale. Ben, we need to talk. You keep saying that. This is serious. Someone's been asking questions. A journalist. Okay. Did you talk to a journalist? That's none of your business. It's absolutely my business if you're spreading false information about this company. I haven't spread any false information. So you did talk to a journalist. I didn't say that. Ben, I'm trying to help you here. If you're planning to publish something, you need to stop. We'll sue you for defamation, breach of contract, and anything else our lawyers can think of. You're already suing me. This would be worse. Much worse. Noted. I'm serious. Whatever you think you know, whatever documentation you think you have, it's not worth the legal bills. Maybe not to you. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're worried, and you should be. Is that a threat? It's an observation. He was quiet for a moment. What do you want, Ben? Really, what's your price? I don't have a price. Everyone has a price. Not me. Not for this. Then you're a fool. Probably. He hung up. I sat there feeling something like satisfaction. Dale was worried. That meant the journalist had done her research. That meant the story was real. At 11 a.m., Reggie called. I talked to her. And? She's intense. What did you tell her? Everything. What they asked you to do. How everyone in the room just nodded along. How nobody pushed back. Did she believe you? I think so. She asked a lot of follow-up questions. Details about who was there, what time it was, what the room looked like. She's thorough. That's good. Ben, I'm scared. I know. If they figure out it was me, they won't. How do you know? Because there were 12 people in that room. Any of them could have talked. They'll suspect everyone. That's not reassuring. It's realistic. He was quiet. Why are you doing this? I told you, because it's true. That's not a reason. Truth doesn't pay bills. No, but lies are expensive too. That doesn't make sense. It will eventually. He hung up. I called Janet. Did you talk to my witness? I did. He's credible, scared, but credible. So you have what you need? I have most of what I need. I still want more documentation. Internal emails, meeting minutes, budget proposals. Anything that shows they knew about the problems and chose not to fix them. I gave you the security audit. That's your documentation. I need theirs. I don't work there anymore. I don't have access. Then find someone who does. Who? That's your problem, not mine. Janet. Mr. Hoffman, I'm going to be blunt. Your story is good, but good isn't enough. I need great. I need documentation from the company itself showing negligence. Without that, this is just a he said, she said dispute between a disgruntled employee and his former employer. I'm not disgruntled. I'm right. Those aren't mutually exclusive. She had a point. Give me 2 days, I said. You have one. I'm running this Saturday, with or without additional documentation. That's 3 days. Today's Wednesday. I need the final draft by Friday afternoon. That gives you today and tomorrow. Fine, 2 days. I hung up and immediately called Trevor. He didn't answer. I left a message. Trevor, it's Ben. I need to talk to you. Not about the lawsuit, about the security audit. Call me back. He didn't call back. At 1 p.m. I drove to the company. I parked in the visitor lot and walked in through the front door. Angela was at the reception desk. She looked surprised to see me. Ben, you can't be here. Why not? The restraining order. You're not supposed to contact anyone who works here. I'm not contacting anyone. I'm visiting. This is a public building. It's not public. It's private property. Then call security. She picked up the phone. I sat down in the waiting area and picked up a magazine. 5 minutes later, a security guard appeared. Not the usual guy. Someone new, younger, probably hired after I left. Sir, I need you to leave. Why? You're trespassing. I'm visiting. Do you have an appointment? No. Then you're trespassing. I stood up. Fine. Tell Dale I was here. I'll do that. I walked out slowly, making sure Angela and the security guard both saw me leave. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and waited. At 2:15, Trevor came out. He looked around, spotted my car, and walked over. I rolled down the window. What are you doing here? He asked. Trying to talk to you. You can't just show up at my workplace. Our workplace. Former workplace. Ben, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Am I? Because it seems pretty simple to me. I documented problems. They ignored them. Something bad happened. They blamed me. Now I want people to know the truth. What truth? That you're bitter about losing your job? That they knew about vulnerabilities and did nothing? That the breach was predictable? That I warned them and they ignored me? You don't know that's true. I have 50 pages of documentation that says it's true. Documentation you wrote, your perspective, your interpretation. Which is why I need their documentation, meeting minutes, budget emails, approval chains, proof that they knew and chose not to act. I don't have access to that. You have my old access. That includes email archives. That's privileged. It's not attorney-client. It's operational documentation. Ben, Trevor, I'm going to be very clear with you. A journalist is publishing a story on Saturday. That story is going to detail the security failures at this company. It's going to name names. It's going to include my documentation. And it's going to look very bad for everyone involved. You can't do that. I already did. The only question now is whether the story includes both sides or just mine. That's blackmail. No, it's journalism. I'm giving you the opportunity to provide your perspective, to share the company's documentation, to show that maybe I'm wrong. You're not wrong. You're just an asshole. Maybe, but I'm an asshole with receipts. He looked at me with something like hatred, which was fair. I'd probably look at me that way too. I'm not helping you, he said. Then you're helping them hide the truth. I'm keeping my job. Is it worth it? Yes. He walked away. I sat there for another minute, then drove home. My wife was in the kitchen when I got back. How'd it go? She asked. About how you'd expect. Nobody wants to help. Can't blame them. I can, actually. Ben. What? They're choosing convenience over truth. That's blamable. They're choosing survival over principle. That's human. Same thing. It's not. I went upstairs to the office. She followed me. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know yet. The journalist needs documentation by Friday. I know. And you don't have it. Not yet. So what's the plan? I looked at the laptop, at the encrypted file I'd created yesterday, the one with all the legacy access issues, the backdoors I'd created for emergency maintenance. I'm thinking, I said. Don't. Don't what? Whatever you're thinking, don't do it. How do you know what I'm thinking? Because I know you, and I know that look. You're thinking about doing something illegal. I'm thinking about accessing documentation I created. Using credentials you no longer have. Using credentials that were never properly revoked. That's still illegal. Is it? If they failed to secure their systems, is it illegal to point that out? If you have to break in to point it out, yes. She was right. Again. What if I don't break in? I asked. What if I just document what could be accessed? That's still you admitting you know how to access it. Which I already told them. In writing. In my security audits. Ben, I'm serious. Don't do this. What else am I supposed to do? Let the journalist publish with what she has. Your testimony, the witness, your documentation, that's enough. It's not. She said so. Then maybe this story doesn't run. Then I lost my job for nothing. You didn't lose your job for nothing. You lost it because you refused to lie. That matters. Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, all it did was make me unemployed. She sat down on the storage ottoman. What happened to you? What do you mean? You used to be careful, thoughtful. You'd analyze everything from every angle before making a decision. Now you're just reacting, pushing back harder every time someone pushes you. Because nobody listened when I was careful and thoughtful. So you're just going to burn it all down? Maybe. And then what? I don't know. That's not a plan, Ben. That's revenge. Good. She stood up. I'm going to say this once. If you do something illegal, I can't protect you. I can't lie for you in court. I can't pretend I didn't know. So if you're planning to break into their systems, tell me now, so I can decide whether to stay or go. That stopped me. You'd leave? I'd testify truthfully, which might mean against you. So yes, I'd leave. To protect myself. You think I'd ask you to lie? I think you're not thinking clearly right now, and I think you might ask me to do things you wouldn't normally ask, so I'm setting boundaries. She left the office. I sat there feeling like I'd been slapped. She was right. About all of it. I was reacting. I was pushing back. I was letting this consume me, and I was about to cross a line I couldn't uncross. I deleted the encrypted file. Permanently this time. Overwrite deletion, 7 passes, unrecoverable. Then I called Janet Rice. I don't have the additional documentation. Why not? Because getting it would require illegal access. I'm not doing that. Then we publish with what we have. Will it be enough? It'll be something. Whether it's enough depends on how they respond. When does it go live? Saturday morning, 6 a.m. That's early. That's when business news runs, before the markets open. Maximum impact. Okay. Mr. Hoffman, you did the right thing, not breaking in. Doesn't feel like it. It never does, but it is. She hung up. I sat there for a long time, thinking about right things and wrong things and the difference between revenge and justice. Eventually, my wife came back upstairs. Did you delete it? She asked. Yes. Good. She sat next to me. We didn't say anything for a while. I'm sorry, I finally said. For what? For making you choose between me and the law. You didn't make me choose. You chose for me. I almost didn't. But you did. That matters. She kissed me and went back downstairs. I sat in the office until dark, thinking about Saturday and what would happen when the story published, the lawsuits, the denials, the corporate spin, and whether any of it would matter. At midnight, I went to bed. Friday was going to be the last quiet day for a while. I should probably enjoy it.